We are also incredibly thrilled about this warm weather, but let us be careful, folks. You never want to equate weather with climate, but this weather may indeed be a factor of climate change. We're going to talk about climate change with State Senator Rob Hogue and what might happen at the state capitol this coming session.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
Hello, Mid-American Energy.
I'm very concerned that you want to bill me an extra $5,000 to build a nuclear reactor. Do you know we're in the middle of a recession?
Oh, we were hoping you wouldn't hear about that until after the legislature had taken action.
Why not let your shareholders pick up the tab?
Oh, way too risky for our shareholders. We need you, our loyal customers, to pay for it.
Wait, let me see if I understand this. Mid-American wants to build a nuclear power plant in 10 or 20 years, and they want me to pay for it now?
That's right.
Well, I'll just take my business elsewhere.
Sorry, we're a monopoly. What we say goes.
I've heard nuclear power is more expensive than other sources.
Yes it is.
And I've heard there's no plan for how to dispose of nuclear waste.
We're looking at shooting it into the sun.
Well, I'm not going to sit back and let you make bad decisions with my money.
We're betting you will.
Stop Mid-American's power grab. Call your legislators today. 281-3371. 281-3371.
Paid for by Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Everything just flying around the office here. Furniture, chairs, guests. Anyway, we've got a few things to talk about today, and I'm delighted to have State Senator Rob Hogue join us. Later in the program, I want to tell you about what a lawbreaker my bicycle is. I want to talk about what a lawbreaker some lambs can be, some sheep can be, and also talk with you about the upcoming comedy performance of Lee Camp, which I'm very, very excited about. We're also going to talk later with Adil Khan, I got it right this time, about civil liberties and legislation at the federal level, specifically the National Defense Authorization Act. But first, I am delighted to welcome State Senator Rob Hogue to the program. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Ed. Good to be with you.
I'm sorry you couldn't be with us in person, but I imagine you've got constituent activities to attend to in Cedar Rapids.
Ed, there's always a lot going on, and you can only drive to Des Moines so many times before you blow through your carbon budget for the year.
Yeah, well, you probably went through it a long time ago.
Yeah, I did, although this year I'm down a little bit. Last year I was about 27,000 miles for the year driving.
Wow.
This year I think I'm going to come in between 22 and 23,000, so that's a lot better.
And what kind of mileage do you get on your vehicle?
I'm getting about 56.
Wow.
I've got a new Toyota Prius, and I'm getting about 56 miles per gallon for the year.
Well, if I could have talked you and two friends into going to Florida with me next month for a Christmas with my kids, that would have been the cheapest way in terms of carbon footprint. The worst, of course, is plane travel. Second best was Megabus, so I'm looking forward to a nice Megabus trip. We'll see how that goes.
There's no question that carpooling and fuel-efficient cars is the way to go for people who want to be mobile.
Hey, anyway, let's talk about climate change. I do want to get your take on some of the big things happening around the world, but what about here in Iowa? We've seen increased discussion about the issue. We have a group of 138 scientists across the state who are now saying climate change, big deal, we got to do something about it. What's your sense of what might happen at the State House this coming session?
Well, Ed, there are a couple things that I'm really hopeful to happen. And, of course, as you know, it depends on how things develop. But first of all, I think we have a really good opportunity for a significant increase in investment in our natural resources in the state. You'll recall it was just 2 years ago where voters overwhelmingly support a constitutionally protected trust fund. And with the state having so much money in its bank accounts, right now it's nearly $1.2 billion. It seems to me we've got a really good case to be made that at least on a short-term basis, we need a significant increase in funding for natural resources, and that's something that unites people. It unites hunters. It reunites people who like to fish, people who like to recreate outdoors. It unites farmers who want to voluntarily do the right thing. It unites environmentalists. And it will help us deal with the changing climate. And, in Iowa, we're in the midst of just this terrible drought.
Yeah, which is probably going to get worse.
It's probably going to get worse, and that means it's that much more important for us to invest in wetlands, buffer strips, permanent conservation cover, cover crops. There's so much stuff we need to do to deal with the changing climate. This is the difference from this debate 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was all, how do we prevent climate change from happening, or should someday we adapt? Well, guess what? We didn't do either, and now it's time we've got to adapt.
Right.
At the same time that we're also slashing our greenhouse gas emissions to be more sustainable.
Right. Yeah. And adaptation is clearly critical at this point. I mean, we've got a crisis.
We really do. Ed, if I were planning on planting trees next year, I wouldn't be planting trees that were adapted for Iowa. I'd be planting trees that were adapted for Arkansas or Oklahoma. Mm-hmm.
Well, that might do wonders for the potential Iowa pecan industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just the Iowa that I knew growing up as a kid in the 60s and 70s is gone forever. Mm-hmm. And really, the climate issue now is we got to adapt to the changes that we're now irreversibly committed to, at the same time that we slash our greenhouse gas emissions to prevent it from getting that much worse. And on that agenda, there are a lot of things I'm really excited about the legislature this year. I think there might be an opportunity finally to get the new rail lines extended into Iowa. I've got a great proposal to move Iowa into the top 25 for solar power in the country. The University of Iowa needs some good news. We've got money. Let's invest in solar power there. And it's the gift to the University of Iowa that just keeps on giving in perpetuity while you have those solar cells. A lot of growing interest in distributed generation. So it's really important for listeners to be speaking up with legislators right now and saying, hey, we want to invest in natural resources. We want to invest in clean energy. We have to do these things because they're sustainable for our economy and for the planet, and we need to do them.
Yeah, well, there's no argument about that. What kind of response do you think you'll get from other Senate Democrats and, I guess more importantly, even the Iowa House, which is controlled by Republicans, and Governor Branstad, who, in the example of light rail, of passenger rail, the governor continues to be opposed to any investment, even an investment that pulls down a 4-to-1 federal match.
Well, it's more than that. It's a 10-to-1 federal match.
Is it a 10-to-1 match
10 to
now?
1.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very positive deal. And one of the things, Ed, I was in Chicago recently, and I just want to share some news. First of all, there's a new manufacturing plant in Rochelle, Illinois, that's manufacturing high-speed rail cars. Those are real jobs for real Americans for this new energy economy, and you just see it all over the place. The other thing that was really interesting on my trip to Chicago, we talk about climate change, and you can't read the newspapers now without there being almost a story every day about how the climate is changing. Yeah. Well, this was really frightening. In Lake Michigan, despite increased precipitation over the last 15 years in the Lake Michigan watershed, lake levels have fallen on average by 5 feet, and right now they're at a record low in the entire recorded history of Lake Michigan.
Wow, and is that because of increased use of water from the lake, or increased evaporation because of the heat?
Increased evaporation. Here's what has happened. Especially in the winters, it has warmed, so there's substantially less ice cover. And without the ice cover, the waters warm up. They have more opportunity for evaporation, and there is really just nothing to do about it. And the thing that's scary is that's despite an increase in precipitation on average over the last 15 years. If the drought continues, we may be looking at a Lake Michigan that's very different. And one of the points, Ed, that people need to understand is this affects people of all kinds of income levels. Obviously, it's hardest on the poor. But if the rich think they're going to be insulated from this, they are so wrong. All that beachfront property up on Lake Michigan in Wisconsin that is so valuable. Right. A guy showed a photograph that I saw where the shoreline has now moved 20, 30, 40, 50 yards where the lake used to be. So all the docks they had invested in are no good anymore. All the swim access they thought they have is gone. And this is urgent.
So you think the changes on Lake Michigan are permanent, given the new climate reality?
That's what the scientists from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee was saying. Wow. And it's just like our scientists telling us in Iowa, hey, we're getting stronger floods and stronger storms at the same time that our droughts are stronger. This is the worst drought of my lifetime. I remember 88. This is much worse than 88.
Yeah, 88 was pretty bad.
And 88 was pretty bad, but we are in deep, deep danger. And, in Cedar Rapids, we have had, maybe 5 inches of rain over the last month and a half. So we're in a better position than most people across the state. Yeah. Really need to get at it. Ed, I know one other thing I really want to get in here is at the congressional level, obviously climate change, there are things the state has to do, and there are smart things the state can do. But at the climate issue, we really need national leadership, and we really need Congressman Tom Latham to step up. This is his moment. He's in the majority party. He's close to Speaker Boehner. Tom Latham, who has had this reputation as a moderate Republican of some sort, this is his moment to stand up, and if he can't get the production tax credit extended.
This is the wind energy production tax credit.
Right. This is the wind energy tax credit. If he can't get that extended when he campaigned on it, when he's in the majority party, there's something terribly wrong with Congressman Latham, and we need people to call Latham.
Well, while they're at it, call Steve King as well. I mean, King came out in support of that wind energy tax credit.
Absolutely, Steve King, and Steve King's got to deliver people who share his ideology. He's got to get Michelle Bachmann to support it. He's got to get these other really conservative, maybe what I'd even consider extremist.
As prominent as Minnesota is in terms of wind energy as well, I would think that she's getting pressure. Bachmann, that is getting pressure from her own constituents.
You would think so, but we really need that done. And here's the point: when you've got something that is so good for our economy and so good for the development of renewable energy and dealing with climate change, and it's so popular, if Congress can't pass that, what can they pass? Yeah. I mean, I think this is a real moment that will reveal: do congressional Republicans want government to work, or is really their whole agenda to make?
Well, and let me ask you that, Rob. On climate change, does President Obama really want to address this problem? And let's start by looking at the Keystone Pipeline. I mean, I have concerns that he's going to go ahead and authorize continued work on the pipeline.
Well, remember, that shouldn't be called the Keystone XL pipeline. That should be called the Keystone Export Pipeline, because it's all about taking the tar sands to Port Arthur, Texas, to export it. It will actually increase gas prices in Iowa by 7 to 10 cents per gallon, because that the tar sands oil will no longer be confined to the upper Midwest. They'll now have it on the global market. It's terrible. It's terrible for farmers. It's terrible for ranchers. It's terrible for the environment.
Right, and President Obama can stop it.
I agree with you, and I have talked to him personally about that. when he was here. We need to get it done. And if people want to help, I know the Sierra Club is asking people to go to Washington, D.C. for President's Day weekend in February, and they are going to be taking direct action there in D.C. To try to convince the president to say no to any further approvals for that pipeline. If somebody understands climate change at all, the only answer is to leave the tar sands in the ground, just like leaving the natural gas fracking resources in the ground.
Do you think that President Obama understands climate change?
Well, I've talked to him about it. He doesn't understand it as well as I'd like, but I think he understands it a lot better than a lot of people.
Okay, and enough to ixnay the pipeline.
I think there's a really good chance, no guarantee in this business, Ed, as you know, but I think if people continue to speak up, I think we can stop it.
All right. And I know the argument that you're going to hear from the other side is, well, we need all these jobs. And I'm hearing mixed reports on how many jobs will be created during the construction of the pipeline. They won't be that many when you consider how many could be created with a comparable investment in wind energy, solar energy, geothermal. But then at the end of the game, you've got a handful of export, employees working in Texas on a refinery, shipping oil overseas. That's not going to be a big job creator in the long haul. Yeah,
well, and the thing is, Ed, is if you don't deal with climate change, you're going to ruin your economy. I mean, that's the bottom line here is we cannot afford any more Superstorm Sandys, Hurricane Sandys. We can't afford floods along the Missouri River. We can't afford the floods of 2008. The only way to protect our economy, both short run and long run, is to do the things that deal with climate change. Yeah. It is just a total fool's errand if you think, well, for 5 or 10 jobs now, I'm going to ruin the economy and cost us thousands of jobs and billions of dollars later. That's not a good deal. So what are the 2 or 3 top priorities that you would suggest people look for at the State House? What can we push to help make sure climate change gets a fair consideration at the Capitol? Okay, really quick. You got to call Tom Latham on this production tax credit. But then at the state level, talk to legislators about now is the time to invest in our natural resources so that we can deal with floods and droughts. And second, ask people to invest in Iowa Renewable Energy Jobs 2020, rail, solar, distributed generation.
Okay. And those will be those will be individual bills, or they'll be components of budget appropriations bills?
At this point, I still don't know, Ed, because it kind of depends who steps up on the House Republican side to take the lead on this stuff. And one final thing I might say, there's going to be this big debate about commercial property taxes. Right. 2 things on that. First of all, let's not give away the barn. We need revenue for things like investing in natural resources. But second, why don't we use that to provide incentives for businesses that adopt green practices? Rather than just saying every business gets a tax cut, let's target those tax cuts to people who have built green buildings, who have adopted green infrastructure, good stormwater management practices. That's another thing that people should be speaking up on. But the key thing is you got to speak up. Now's the time. We need people. We need to hear from people. And of course, Governor Branstad is trying to take that argument the other direction, saying, "Hey, we need this property tax cut for businesses, or I'll be forced to continue to do these kind of giveaways to Egyptian fertilizer companies for $251 million a pop." There is absolutely nothing sustainable about the Egyptian fertilizer plant, and that's just a red herring. And that's all I have to say, Ed. We need. We need an economic development strategy that is sustainable, and there is nothing sustainable about building this mammoth fertilizer plant using precious fossil fuels for fertilizer. That thing's just ridiculous. Around the world, though, there are encouraging developments on the battle to address climate change. Certainly, we've seen a lot of significant protests around specific environmental and ecological type projects. And just this past week, we saw the first ever march in Qatar against that country's lack of any initiative on climate change. That was unprecedented. And again, when you start seeing people taking to the streets in Qatar about climate change, maybe there's hope that this world will take the problem seriously. Well, Ed, I had the chance. One of the things I did on my trip to Chicago recently was I got to see Bill McKibben. he's doing a great job. 350.org is the organization people should get connected to. He's pushing now for divestment from fossil fuel companies by colleges, universities, cities, pension systems, IPERs. You might see some legislation proposing divestment from fossil fuel companies for IPERs. This is urgent. We need, let me say what McKibben said, because he really said it best. He said, keep doing everything you've been doing, but now it's time to add to it this urgent effort at investment. And I really think that people need to keep thinking about this. Keep doing what you're doing, but add something to it. Do something more. Talk to your legislators. Call Congressman Latham. Get involved with these organizations. This is a winnable fight if we all get involved, pull together, and do this. But it's going to take a big effort, and now is our time. This is the defining historical issue of our time, and we need to pull together and do all these things, conserve energy, invest in renewables, invest in our natural resources, and do it working together. And if we do, we're going to have a much better future than if we just sit back and let the fossil fuel companies decide what's going to happen.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us and for your advocacy on behalf of all of us who care about this planet and our natural resources and our environment.
Well, thanks, Ed. Thanks for the opportunity to be on your show, and keep in touch.
Good luck. All right, folks, I want to thank Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club for sponsoring this program, and for Gateway Market for sponsoring this segment of our show. Gateway, of course, a local grocery store at 20th and Woodland. There we go, 20th and Woodland in downtown Des Moines in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. I got some maple syrup there this weekend, and I tell you, I had some great French toast. The maple syrup with their ciabatta, very, very good. Very, very good. I would recommend that and pretty much everything else. I've never had anything I bought at Gateway that didn't taste great. A lot of local sources are used. There's also a cafe, of course, for breakfast, lunch, and supper. And there's also a catering service. So check them out, folks, Gateway Market and Cafe at 20th and Woodland. I'll be back in a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm a burrito.
I'm a fighting burrito, full of fresh ingredients prepared before your very eyes.
I don't have eyes.
I have over 28 options and 268 million combinations, including Rizo for vegetarians.
I can take my meat off and call myself vegetarian.
Put that back on. The Fighting Burrito is locally owned.
I'm owned by some big corporation somewhere. Say, you want to go on a date?
No thanks. I'm seeing a quesadilla.
The Fighting Burrito online, fightingburrito.com. Join the fight.
It's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
Host is a locally owned restaurant in downtown Des Moines that focuses its food and philosophy on embracing simplicity. The majority of Host's food is from local farmers who practice sustainable and health-conscious agriculture. Much of what you'll find on your plate is a familiar comfort food, presented with a modern and tasty interpretation. Host is open for lunch Monday through Friday from 11 to 2, and also available for private dinner events and special themed dinners throughout the month. So, check out Host at 13th and Locust in Des Moines.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That's Baber's Neighbors, folks. Mr. Baber's Neighbors to you. Brother Trucker also supplying some music for this program, and also Pumptown. And speaking of pumped, I'm pumped about Max Wellman's Home for the Holidays concert coming up this weekend. And it was really great to get out to the Not As Silent Night concert. For 10 years, I've been meaning to go to that. I finally pulled it off. It was a great event. And I hope you'll continue to support the Natas. But yeah, check out Max Wellman's concert coming up this weekend at the Des Moines Social Club. Okay, so I want to thank also Proof Restaurant for sponsoring this segment of our program. And I want to thank Adil Khan for joining us. He was here last week. He did not totally mess up the studio or misbehave in any way that was significant or disruptive. So I said, well, if you really want to come back on my show, please do. He is concerned about the initiative at the federal level in the U.S. Senate right now to further the reach into our civil liberties through the National Defense Authorization Act. Welcome to the show, Adil. And maybe start by giving us a brief background as to what's happening.
Well, already that was passed was NDAA. They passed it a while back, and part of that, the most controversial provision of that was the indefinite detention, which took away your habeas corpus rights and stated that anytime President Obama had an inkling that you were somebody suspicious, he could throw you into a prison without a right to a trial and indefinitely detain you.
Any president, or more generally speaking, the administration, government, the federal government.
Yes. It's really the executive branch, the White House. Right. It's putting the power to indefinitely detain in the hands of the president. So yes, it's Obama or whoever the next president could be.
So a Homeland Security officer, official, whatever the right word is, could apprehend a U.S. citizen on suspicion of terrorism without really having any, there's no check and balance on that power, and they could put you in prison.
Yeah,
and then that bill passed.
That was last year, I think in 2012. I think the last session that actually passed. The indefinite.
I thought it was earlier this year, still this calendar year. No?
I'm trying to think. I think it's 2012, and this is the 2013 NDAA. It's the National Defense Authorization Act. It's giving the funding for the defense spending. So this is a provision that's inserted into that. Right. So the 2013 version is the one that just went through on Friday that they're actually currently debating. That's actually for 2013. That's for the next allocation.
And what has happened since the original approval of that legislation? Have we seen those powers used by the executive branch?
Yeah, we have. We've seen it in cases such as Bradley Manning. There's been other cases that have been going on that they've been fighting.
So Bradley Manning would not have been apprehended, imprisoned, and some say tortured if that legislation had not been enacted. And again, folks know who Bradley Manning is, I assume, the soldier who blew the lid on all the secret memos and messages that he leaked them to WikiLeaks. That's almost a tongue twister. And of course, the WikiLeaks top dude is in trouble too. I think he may still be in hiding at an embassy in London. But yeah, Bradley Manning is still in prison. There's been a total suspension of his habeas corpus rights. Yeah, so that's a good example.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for this provision, I don't think you would have seen that. And the Bradley Manning case was important because it brought attention to this. The difference between 1 year when you have senators that are outcrying against this. You have Senator Rand Paul, who was a big, been fighting on the floor of the Senate, saying, "Why are we doing this? We've been fighting for habeas corpus rights and defending them for 800 years. Why are you abandoning it now?" And when this bill actually came up on the floor recently, the Feinstein Amendment, it did actually the Feinstein Amendment is finally it has been attached to, I think it's Bill 3018, and what it basically says is you can indefinitely detain, but not United States citizens. And
so that would have protected Bradley Manning and perhaps some others.
Yes, Bradley Manning, it would protect that and some others. But there's still some outcry against this, and the reason for that is the people who came out against this was the Japanese American Citizen League. And of course, we know what happened in World War,
the internment camps in World War II.
Yeah, and half of the people that were in those internment camps were not United States citizens. Some of them were just green card holders. Some of them just had work visas, and it didn't apply for that. And our Constitution has traditionally upheld that people within the United States boundaries, even immigrants, they are still allowed some basic, basic human rights, such as having a trial, not being indefinitely detained.
And in that example you gave, didn't our government eventually apologize to some of the Japanese, some or all of the Japanese citizens held in detention?
Yeah, not only has our government apologized, but it's universally accepted that was a dark time in our history, and in a time when we've used the scare. We were scared, we were in fear, and we were able to convince our politicians to be able to use such a drastic tactic in this response to this fear. So that has been known universally as a dark time in our history, but we are revisiting that. And not only revisiting that, but we've now made a bill, or we've tried to make Congress pass bills that have almost endorsed this kind of practice and allowed this to happen.
Folks, we're talking with Adil Khan this segment of the program about the National Defense Authorization Act, about habeas corpus, and about efforts to suspend our civil liberties, or in one case in Washington, D.C. right now, an effort by some senators in both parties to try to make sure that U.S. citizens are protected, at a minimum, that U.S. citizens are protected from this erosion of our civil rights. If you want to join the conversation, it's 244-0077, 244-0077. Area code 855 if you want that to be a toll-free call. So, Adil, right now it's an interesting coalition of people on our side. By our side, I mean the folks who really believe that liberty is important, that we ought not to allow government to go too far in trying to incarcerate or apprehend citizens or even visitors without due cause. So we have Senator Feinstein, a noted liberal Democrat, working with
Senator Rand Paul,
and
a senator from Utah as well.
Who's the senator from Utah?
I'm actually, I think it was Green. I don't exactly remember the name. That one kind of evades me right now.
Okay.
But it is it's the Republican senator from Utah. Okay. That's what I know as well.
And so and this is an amendment on a bill that is going to receive debate. Any idea when?
Well, actually, the amendment passed. The amendment passed 67-29.
And how about our own senator?
Well, and that's the big problem we have is our own Senator Grassley was on the opposition. You had 29 senators that
voted against civil liberties.
He voted against this specific amendment. And remember, this amendment was just outlining that United States citizens can't be detained without a fair trial, being able to hear their case.
And Harkin voted on the other side.
Harkin, yes, on the other side, okay. And you had. So this is a kind of reversal because it's usually the Republican Party that tries to stand up for civil liberties or trying to protect our constitutional.
I'm not sure about that.
Well, they're usually the one.
I think it's a pretty mixed bag across the board, I'd say.
I think it matters who's in office. If there's a Republican in office,
so who did the Patriot Act come from? That's Bush.
The Patriot Act was from Bush. Yeah,
I'm not sure you can make a case that Republicans tend to defend civil liberties more than Democrats.
Traditionally, that's what the party is supposed to be standing up for.
That's what it says. Yes. When it comes to like a woman's right to choose, who's the party that tends to defend that civil liberty?
Well, I mean, when it comes to that stance is being able to protect life. I mean, that's a whole different discussion we could be having.
But I know I'm jumping on a sidebar here, and I was thinking I'd apologize, but no, I'm not going to. But let's go back to the main point anyhow.
So you have Senator Grassley, and you have, other notable senators. You have, Marco Rubio. You have Thune. People who are considering 2016 runs, taking this opposition to a bill that should be, very popular.
So among the 27 or 29, what was it? 20?
It was 67 to 29.
29. Among the 29 senators who voted the wrong way on this, again, it seems to me a very simple amendment. Don't allow the federal government the executive branch to arrest U.S. citizens, using the abandonment of habeas corpus. Okay, so who among the 29? What's the party breakdown there?
You do see a little bit of a mix. There are Democratic senators that do oppose it, but yes, there are very much establishment Republicans that are on that side. Of course, Senator Rand Paul is not a part of that. There's other senators that are on that line that many, it's 67. So they reached across party lines here to be able to.
But so most of the people supporting liberty in this case are Democrats.
Yes, surprisingly, yes.
Surprising to you.
I'm going to go ahead.
Well, let me ask. Okay. So now, maybe you like this segue.
Okay.
Given the fact that most Democrats are supporting the civil liberty position in the U.S. Senate, one would hope that President Obama would be on our side as well. What's happening with that?
He's actually threatening a veto. He's having a veto threat on this bill, saying that
I told you like the segue.
Yeah, it's what he's stating is it's going to inhibit his ability to change prisoners from going from one camp to another. It might, make his process a little harder. And what this is United States citizens again, and he's issuing a veto threat over this bill. The whole entire NDAA provision, the whole entire defense authorization spending, which he loves to spend on defense size, just like George W. Bush did. He's threatening to veto that whole entire bill over this provision. Thinking, and we're thinking in our minds, why is this so important? Why is this such a high priority for the United States president right now?
Any time the executive branch gets power, they want to keep that power. And this is an example of a privilege they've been given in last year, and they don't want to lose it. That's maybe part of it. There may be more to it than that, but it's got to be a little bit uncomfortable for the president when the majority of your party's members in the U.S. Senate are on the opposite side.
Yeah, and
that's got to be a little uncomfortable.
Not only in the Senate, in the Congress, but you're seeing states actually fighting back against this as well.
Such as?
You have Virginia that actually went ahead and they actually nullified this, which means nullification is a process that the Founding Fathers gave the states, saying that if there is a law that is unconstitutional, you have the ability to be able to declare it, to nullify that.
So if Bradley Manning had been a Virginia resident,
yes,
the federal government would not have been able to apprehend him?
If he was in Virginia, the Virginia State, Patrol, they would be defending him. They would not comply with the federal government to have him handed over.
So what if Homeland Security found Bradley Manning at an internet cafe in Richmond, Virginia, apprehended him before any state patrol could come to his defense, and brought him back to Washington, D.C., or brought him to Guantanamo Bay, wherever?
Well, you would have, if they actually took him already, you would have the Attorney General of Virginia, which right now I think is Ken Cuccinelli. He would be fighting against the federal government and Supreme Court to be able to say, we have nullified this law. It is our state. Give us Bradley Manning back.
Is it real power, or is this the case of Virginia just trying to say, make a statement of principle? But does it really give them power to prevent this kind of abuse of civil liberties in their state?
Well, you have people like the National Guard, for example, the Virginia National Guard. When they go ahead and they do overseas trips, and they are, anyone who's part of that does not have to comply with this. So they might be overseas, but they might be part of the Virginia National Guard, and they don't have to comply with this, which gives them that power. Second, if Bradley Manning is in Virginia, he's going to be able to get protection from the state. Going in, being able to have the patrol from the United States not allow them, to give up Bradley Manning. You will have that power. Now, this bill in Virginia got tremendous support when it was actually passed. There was only one vote against this. So states have this power.
So Democrat and Republican lawmakers alike in Virginia supported this. Is there any opportunity for this to be considered next year here in Iowa?
That's something that should be considered because of the fact that, especially if, let's imagine President Obama puts that veto threat out there, and this bill doesn't get through.
And he has put that veto threat out there.
He has put that veto threat out there.
What kind of timeline are we looking at here?
Right now it's 2013. I'm thinking it's within the next month. It should be. They have to approve it before next month.
Okay, so by the start of the Iowa legislative session on January 14th, we'll know whether this provision has been enacted, and if it does, you would encourage the state legislature to do what they did in Virginia.
Exactly. You have that authority. People should be calling their legislators, say, we want to be able to protect ourselves from this overreach of government taking our habeas corpus rights, especially for United States citizens, to be able to have that overreach. So we have that ability here. There's district courts, especially even in New York, that fought back against it from the press side, and they actually they won also from the court end as well. But here in Iowa, we have that opportunity to be able to use our legislatures to nullify an unconstitutional act and be able to protect the Iowa citizens here from the administration, from the White House coming in and taking away those inalienable rights that we have.
Well, it's fascinating to see how this issue continues to evolve, and I think a lot of us folks are concerned that the federal government in recent years, partly, maybe largely in response to the attacks on the World Trade Center and elsewhere in 2001, are feeling that these are being used, that incident is being used as an excuse to erode our civil liberties, to arrest people without a warrant. This was an issue when I ran for Congress as well, because Leonard Boswell had voted the wrong way on a lot of this stuff. So it's good to see Democrats in the U.S. Senate and some independent-minded Republicans also on the right side. And right now, if the Obama veto threat over this provision were to stand, the Senate would have enough votes to override that veto. But will they have the intestinal fortitude? Will Democrats have the courage to stand up to their own president and say, we're going to veto this?
That's a good question to have. Are they willing to be able to head into the next year's election knowing that people are going to, like, for example, Liberty Iowa is going to be holding our senators accountable, say, this is exactly where you stood on this issue. When it comes time for election for many of these senators in 2 years, I don't think Democrats want to be on the wrong side. We know what stance the president has taken. We know what stance the president's implemented. But will the senators be able to hold up to their constituencies and say, when the time came, we voted to take away citizens' habeas corpus rights? That'll be a good test to find out, and we're willing to put people on record for that.
Well, Otto, I think you're doing some good work. Folks, here's an independent-minded Republican and myself, a very independent-minded former Democrat who can agree very strongly on this and maybe some other issues as well. I'd love to get your take on climate change, by the way, but we don't have time for that today. I'm afraid we've got to move on. I've got some other things to talk about. But again, if this does pass, right now the thing to do, in addition to Rob Hogue's advice to contact Congressman Latham and tell him to support the wind energy tax credit, again, not just support it, but get out there and campaign for it. Same to Steve King. They've said they want to see that happen. They want that reauthorized, and that's an important step forward for climate change, to address climate change. So while you're at it, while you're contacting Steve King and Tom Latham, contact Senator Harkin and thank him for voting for liberty. Ask Grassley what the heck he was thinking and encourage them both to get on board to encourage the president to back off this threat of a veto if this National Defense Authorization provision isn't enacted. So anyway, again, compliments to you for bringing it to my attention. Hopefully there won't have to be an effort here at the state level, but if there is, I hope we can work together on that.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, folks, again, thanks to Adil Khan for joining us. When we come back, I got a few other things to talk about. We got some issues relevant to how hard it is to get a home loan these days. We got some fun to have with sheep running around Des Moines, with my bike breaking laws, and with Lee Camp. I'm real excited about Lee Camp coming to Iowa next month to do a first ever comedy performance here at House of Bricks. We'll talk about those things when we come back here on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait.
Howdy.
And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going, man.
Hi, folks. It's Ed Fallon here. Proof Restaurant at 13th and Locust. You've probably been there for their award-winning, nationally recognized lunch specials. And here's where the chefs really get creative. Let me tell you, they're like artists, okay? I've been there, and it is one of the best meals I have had in Des Moines. I've heard that from other people. You got to check it out. Proof for supper. Do not assume you can get in. Make reservations. Contact Proof Restaurant online at proofrestaurant.com or 244-0655. That's 244-0655.
This is Dr. Holding of the Story County Veterinary Clinic. For 15 years, we have been spaying and neutering feral cat groups at affordable prices. Wild cats destroy game birds and songbirds. A single female cat can produce over 4,000 kittens in 7 years. The shelters are full, so unwanted kittens will be put to sleep. Your cats will stay home and stay healthy. Call us for all your dog and cat needs at the Story County Veterinary Clinic between Ames and Nevada on Highway 30, 1 mile east of Interstate 35. 515-232-8766.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
More than ever, average Americans are being squeezed by high energy prices. For decades, oil companies like British Petroleum have demanded access to the oil off America's coasts, and they even receive taxpayer subsidies. Yet increased drilling won't solve America's energy problem. It will only increase oil industry profits. The Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club supports clean energy solutions, energy efficiency, and conservation as the pathway that's best for America, both for our environment and our economy. For more information, go to iowa.sierraclub.org. That's iowa.sierraclub.org.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That's Pumptown, folks, bringing us back, and I want to thank Proof Restaurant for sponsoring that last segment of our show. Proof, of course, open from not just lunch anymore, but also for supper on Wednesday through Saturday, 5 o'clock on, and some of the most fantastic food you're going to get in Des Moines. Actually, I've heard some of my out-of-town visitors say some of the best meals they find they've ever had anywhere. So check them out, folks. Proof Restaurant from Wednesday through Saturday, now open for dinner at 13th and Locust in downtown Des Moines. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit here because my bad, I totally forgot. I'm just confessing up front. I forgot that I had a fantastic guest coming in the third segment of the show. We're going to talk about those other issues, about my bike breaking the law, about sheep breaking the law, about other people that breaking the law here in Des Moines. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. But today, I want to welcome Sean Faircloth to my show. Sean is the guest here of Dr. Alan Kozlow, who has appeared on the show as well. Sean is an author. He's a former Maine state legislator. I can relate to you on that. And he's also with the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Religion and Science. Reason and Science. Sorry. Religion and Science. Reason and Science. Sorry about that. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
And you are here talking about your latest book.
Yep. Yeah, it's called Attack of the Theocrats, How the Religious Right Harms Us All and What We Can Do About It. And what the book really offers is describing the many problems that are created by religious bias. A lot of people think, well, we dodged a bullet because Rick Perry or Mitt Romney didn't become president. But I'm here to tell you that, in fact, they already passed the theocratic laws in many of the legislatures and in Congress. And a lot of people aren't even aware of it.
Which laws are you referring to?
Oh, well, hundreds in my book. But I'll give you a taste.
Okay.
Let's take children's issues, for example. There's about 38 states. I used to serve as an assistant attorney general handling child protection cases. And there's about 38 states that say, as far as neglect of children, that if your medical neglect of children is based on your religion, then you potentially can neglect your child more. It's our assertion that treating children as actual, human beings is important, and that standard of how you protect children should be uniform. That is, there's no exemptions. And faith healing is one misnomer because there's no healing involved. Horrific cases, children with giant tumors sticking, these are not made up, these are real cases, giant tumors out of their eyes the size of their head, and parents who neglect them. And the law in 38 states gives greater leeway for parents to neglect their children. We say one standard, that's what I write about in my book, for all people, and certainly for the protection of the most vulnerable children.
So what is the appropriate balance between reason and science?
The appropriate balance is that we follow the standard that James Madison had in mind. There is no establishment of religion. We should not have, as unfortunately we do, particularly over the last 30 years, religious laws. We're not supposed to be a religious government in this country. People are allowed to have their own private views, but we shouldn't have statutes, as we do, that set a separate standard based on religion.
Yeah,
and that's what we want.
And yet we do, and we have leading politicians who are very out front about their interest in imposing their version of Scripture on the law of the land. And the most vocal theocrat here in Iowa is Bob Vanderplaats.
Yes.
Whose focus has been his anti-gay agenda.
Yes.
And who may be now in decline, we are hoping. But he's had an impact. The guy's run for governor 3 times. He was able to help oust 3 Supreme Court judges a couple years ago. This year, he seems like he's peaked. Maybe the theocratic movement has peaked. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, no. Yes and no. Obviously, the religious right suffered a blow in this last election at the presidential level.
Yeah, and talk to Tom Aiken and Richard Murdoch about that as well.
In the U.S. Senate. But if you look at the legislative level, you have most of the legislatures, both chambers in this country, controlled by the Republican Party. And even though I was a 10-year Democrat in politics, I'm speaking from a nonpartisan perspective here. To me, there's a valid voice for Barry Goldwater in the Republican Party who said, and I'm quoting him, "I have no respect for the religious right."
I'm aware of that
Barry
quote,
Goldwater would not be even permitted in a Republican, Mr. Conservative, Mr. Republican wouldn't be permitted in a Republican primary today.
I'm not sure Ronald Reagan would get elected in a Republican primary today.
And
certainly Richard Nixon wouldn't.
Certainly. And the key is that a lot of folks aren't aware of the multiplicity of laws that have already gotten on the books. And those folks, I write a chapter in my book called The Fundamentalist 50. And trust me, that was just a sampling. But about politicians, including, of course, Steve King. I represented Bangor, so I know Steve King is way scarier than Stephen King. He's a sweetheart of a guy. But these people, they were not thrown out. The vast majority of the Fundamentalist 50 that I write about in my book, all still in office, all still passing laws, all with their hands on the lever of power. So we got to change that.
There are 50 members of the U.S. House? Or
this is U.S. Congress. Yes, and most of those folks, even the ones who left, were oftentimes replaced by others who had similarly theocratic views. There's been no time in American history where you've had as many elected officials, and I would include the legislatures and school boards very specifically, that expressly are supportive of a theocratic position. This is not what Madison had in mind. And one thing I want to make people aware of is the financial benefits that ministers have from something called the parsonage exemption, where they get to reach into your pocket.
Parsonage exemption.
It is an amazing bit of the IRS code that very few people are aware of. Let me explain it briefly. If you're a minister, and let's compare a minister to the executive director of, say, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps poor babies with AIDS. The executive director of the 501c3 has zip in terms of deductions for their housing. But if you're a mega minister, if you're a mega preacher, and you have an extravagant type of house, all of that, the house, the pool boy, the internet, everything that you relate to the curtilage of that home is not your income. Think of your own life. If you could just say, anything that's related to my housing is not my income, pretty nice. And the boards of these mega churches are often run by the minister who's in charge, so it's a little inside baseball that works tremendously well. It's very enriching. There's a book called Pastorpreneur. The title sort of explains what they're about, where these people are enriching themselves, usually the ones who preach against gay people and against women's choice, and they're doing it with your money.
So do you ever get accused of being anti-religious?
Oh, certainly. But what I'd say is I am pro-religion if the religion says we are going to practice whatever we preach within our congregation. For example, if a congregation wants to say, we don't do marriages for gay people, absolutely fine. I completely support that. Or
left-handed people.
Whatever, if that's their religious viewpoint. But when it comes to statutes, when it comes to laws, you shouldn't have a law that says you get a special privilege for a minister that other people don't get. Why does the executive director of that 501c3 nonprofit not have that benefit? Well, they shouldn't.
I didn't realize that.
But neither should the minister.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a federal law that says that religious groups can ignore local land use laws that you and your for-profit business and your 501c3 have to obey. Right. Nobody's aware of these laws.
I'm aware of that one, actually, because I worked a lot on land use laws when I was a state legislator. That one is familiar to me. But, and abused by developers who like to get a church located on farm ground and then see the community build up around it.
Yes, and a lot of times these mega churches are really businesses now. Well, we're talking about they have the situation of they've got the fitness center, the ice cream parlor. No exaggeration, big, large facilities with many buildings that really go beyond the humble little church.
A friend of mine once said it really, really well, I thought. Christ founded Christianity as community. It moved to Greece where it became a culture. It moved from there to Rome where it became an organization. It moved north to Europe where it became art. And eventually moved to the U.S. where it became a business.
Yes.
So, and we've seen that here. My concern, one of my concerns, is that we were always pointing the finger at the Taliban and Muslim extremists and Muslim organizations that want to dominate government and impose Sharia law, impose their theocratic view. And I'm scratching my head and saying, why are we not concerned about that in our own midst? Just because the theocrats happen to be Christian. I mean, I'm Christian, but to me, anybody trying to impose their will on me or trying to form law based on their religious view is violating a basic tenet of the American vision. And I don't see why Republicans in particular don't get that. My last guest got that.
Yeah, but that has in fact happened to a large degree. Essentially, the religious right has veto power over one of two major political parties in the United States. And I think there's a lot of Republicans on the street, registered Republicans, who don't support that, and they have been disenfranchised.
Many of them
from
have
their
become
own
Democrats
party.
or independents.
Exactly. And I think there's a place for that fiscally conservative viewpoint, but it's not and shouldn't be a theocratic viewpoint. And even among Democrats, there's a tendency to shy away and say, well, we have to still bow and scrape, like Barack Obama went to Billy Graham. That would be the Billy Graham who told his close friend Richard Nixon that he was worried about what the Jews are doing to this country and supported getting lists of Jews. That, to me,
Billy Graham said that?
Yeah, he said that I'm worried about what the Jews are doing to this country. And think of any person who made that kind of anti-Semitic statement. If it were not that he was a powerful minister, they would be shunned by Barack Obama and everyone. But because it's a minister, you get a free pass.
Yeah, and apparently a deduction on your taxes for your mega house and
palatial
your beautiful
homes.
SUV.
If people checked around Iowa and looked at the mega churches in Iowa, just inquire. A lot of it's public record. Yeah. What's the home of the minister? Now, that's fine if the church is doing it only they themselves. But when we, the taxpayers, are helping to subsidize it, I have a problem with it.
Part of my problem is that there are so many wonderful Christians and Jews and Muslims doing very, very good work in their faith communities and in the community at large. And I hate to see them ever get tarnished with that same brush that I think is legitimately applied to folks like Bob Vanderplatz, who are abusing religion and abusing the power that he has.
Well, here's
for ulterior motives.
a suggestion that I have and what I write about in my book, And in my work with Richard Dawkins Foundation, the recent Pew survey came out and said that there's 19.6% of the American population who are not religiously affiliated. Then there's 19% that are with evangelicals. Then there's a large group like liberal Catholics or other Catholics, Jewish Americans, mainline Protestants who tend to be more liberal. I think there could be an alliance, an important alliance between the 19% of Americans who are not religious and a lot of the religious people who agree that religion should be kept out of the government. And then we'd find that, oh, there never was this equipoise between, theocratic views and religious right views. They're actually a small minority compared to the majority view, which can include both religious and non-religious people.
Well, Sean, I've got to wrap up the program, but one last question. What are your plans for Iowa?
Well, I tell you what, we think Iowa, and I mean the foundation and what I write about in my book, is a very important state. You know this. I mean, where there's lots of media attention every 4 years.
The most important state. What do you mean? Very important. We're the most important
the more
state.
important state.
Okay,
New Hampshire tries to say they're most important.
Wow,
yeah. But what we think is really important is that there be sort of a sense of comity and alliance between the religious folks who believe there should be separation of church and state, and the new and dramatically growing, especially among young people, group of people who happen to not be associated with religion. Let's join those groups together and bring our government back to what Madison intended. And I intend to visit Iowa more.
Good. Well, we intend to welcome you here on a regular basis, but if you come too often, we start assuming you have presidential aspirations. So make sure you don't overdo it, or we'll start thinking you're a candidate for
helping
president.
To frame the presidential aspirants' viewpoints.
We don't mind that at all. We can use all the help we can get framing the debate. There's so much to talk about. Anyway, hey, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, and tell Dr. Alan Cozzo I want to thank him for bringing you into my attention. So
thank you, and I will.
Hopefully next time you're in town, I'll get to hear your speech.
Okay.
All right.
Look forward to it.
Folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I want to thank Reynolds Energy Solutions for sponsoring this segment of our program. We talked earlier about climate change, and the most important thing you can do for climate change is to make sure your home is energy efficient. So get Tim to come over and do an audit for you. It's free, won't cost you a penny, and he will very likely identify ways you can save energy and save money and reduce your carbon footprint so you can go to bed at night feeling like a much better person. Anyway, we'll be back tomorrow, folks. Bradshaw's going to be with me, the ever fleet-footed Bradshaw. We have so many political stuff to go over, so much political stuff to go over. But I want to make sure we talk about lambs and bikes breaking laws here in Iowa. And again, I don't know where the conversation will go from there. But stay tuned for Bradshaw at 1:30. And thanks again for tuning in.
Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave. and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.